Hi, everybody. I'm Al Bernstein, Showtime boxing analyst, and I listen to the Ringside Boxing Show.
Al Bernstein says the Ringside Boxing Show is great. This is Thomas Hauser. Who am I to argue with Al Bernstein?
Live from Monterey on California's beautiful Central Coast, this is the Ringside Boxing Show. I'm Dennis Taylor, welcoming you to join me and my expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and John J. Responsi, today and every week for the hottest, sweatiest show on the West Coast. And now, from Studio 1A, it's the Ringside Boxing Show.
Welcome to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm Dennis Taylor, and we've got one of boxing's true legends scheduled to join us in about 30 minutes. Gentleman Gerry Cooney fought Larry Holmes in 1982 in one of the biggest heavyweight championship fights of all time, really, an event that was shown in more than 150 countries. Holmes was 39-0 at the time, and he had a very narrow edge on all three scorecards when the fight was stopped in the 13th round. Promoter Don King labeled Cooney as the Great White Hope, turned it into an event that was so racially charged that there were police snipers stationed on the rooftops of the hotels surrounding the outdoor arena at Caesar's Palace, looking to protect the fighters from rumored assassination attempts. Gerry Cooney is going to join us shortly to talk about all of that and a lot more. He also has a biography that's due to hit the bookshelves in December called Gentleman Gerry Cooney Going the Distance. So we'll all be looking for that. But first we're going to talk about the big weekend fights and some other stuff with our expert analyst. Travis Hartman is a professional boxer, boxing trainer, and promoter from Osborne, Missouri. He's now living and training in Orlando, Florida. Rizwan Zahid is a boxing journalist from Toronto, and John J. Responsi is chief lead writer for MaxBoxing.com and DogHouseBoxing.com. And John and I teamed up to write Intimate Warfare, the true story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward boxing trilogy, which was an Amazon bestseller. And Travis is a short timer today. He's only got about 15 minutes with us. So what we're going to do is I want to get everybody's prediction of next week's fight, Canelo versus Golovkin, right away, so people can run out and bet their mortgages on what they think. Travis, you go first. Who's going to win this fight and why?
I'm gonna roll with Canelo, who I've been saying the whole time. I think he's gonna win it's gonna be a really close decision. I think it's gonna be a similar fight as the first. I just think that Canelo's just gonna do a little bit more. He's gonna put his he has those little spurts that he did in the first fight anyways, where he let his hands go and he did really well, but then he would stop and not do it. I think this time they know better. They know how close the scorecards were gonna be, so I think he's gonna up his offensive output a lot more this time around, and I think he's going to pull it off. I think he's going to pull off a very, very close decision again. I don't see the fight being crazy different from the first one, to be honest, but I think Canelo is going to do just a little more this time because he knows he has to. And honestly, his legacy's on the line here, guys, because of all the stuff that's been going on leading up to this fight. So he has a lot to prove. So I think we're going to see the best Canelo that we could possibly see, and Triple G is going to bring it like he always does. But I'm definitely rolling with Canelo by a decision on this one.
Riz, how's it going to shake down? Who's going to win?
I think the same thing. I just think I don't think the age. I think the age factor is a bit of a factor. I wouldn't say it's a tremendous amount, but I mean, boxing in life is a game of inches, and I think if Golovkin's just even 2 or 3% slower, that makes a big difference. All the shots that he would be landing are now just missing, and I think youth's going to play a factor, and I think some of the rounds that are close, Canelo will be able to steal them maybe a little more decisively, and I think he'll win decision, probably 7 rounds to 5, 8 to 4, something along those lines. I've been saying for a while I thought Golovkin had slowed down. I thought that when he fought Kell Brook, even though he was still winning, he still looked a tad slower, and even though I still think that Daniel Jacobs was the hardest fight for Golovkin. I mean, if we're looking at how long ago that was, I think that was about a year and a half ago at least now, right? So 18 months, especially at Golovkin's age, can be a huge factor. And, there's certain things that he wasn't able to do well in the first fight, and he wasn't able to go to the body much. Canelo was able to kind of stay off the ropes well. So, I think youth plays a factor, and it's kind of a shame. I hope that's not what the decisive factor is, because we all know this fight should have happened kind of 3 years before, and I think we could have seen a drastically different result at the time. But we're in 2018, and as the result stands, I think I'm going to have to go with Canelo, similar to the way Travis said, just a close but comfortable decision.
John, what's your call?
Man, I've been flip-flopping around like a politician reading polls, Dennis. I had Canelo winning, then I thought, well, maybe Golovkin, but now I'm back to Canelo, and I'll tell you why. It's because I've watched a lot about it. As we all do, I watched 24/7, the HBO, the Always Excellent documentary, Part 1, and Travis hit on what I think is the most important thing is legacy. Canelo is really fighting for his legacy. I mean, this is really the most important fight of his life. And I think that he's going to be the best he can be that night. And that's pretty damn good, as we all know. And age also is another factor. Golovkin is a year older than he was last year. That is a factor. With Canelo, it all depends on his stamina. If he can stay busy and outwork Golovkin, he's going to win a decision. If he does what he did the last time and lays on the ropes and tries to rest, I think Golovkin's going to be more aggressive this time. I do. I think he knows that he didn't do what he usually does. He was even tentative a little bit in the beginning. I think he's going to try to start a little faster, which a little harder to do when you're older. But I really see a seesaw fight, back and forth, maybe a little bit like the Garcia-Porter fight where this guy wins around, the other guy wins around, this guy wins around, the other guy wins. And Canelo maybe edging it, split decision by a point or two, and probably controversial again. But I think I agree with Travis, too. I think it's going to be similar to the first fight, but I think there will be a little more action, especially in the beginning. I think there might be a stand. Somebody's going to take a stand, maybe Canelo, and try to get that out of his system and then go back to his boxing because he likes to box. We know that. He prefers boxing. Golovkin will be pursuing him, but I expect it to be a good fight. Not fight of the year, but I expect it to be a very tense, competitive, good fight.
How could all three of my expert analysts be completely cracked? I like Golovkin. He won the first fight. I think he's going to be more aggressive this time. He's going to cut off the ring better. He's going to inflict more damage in the early rounds, particularly on the body. Canelo's body is smaller for this fight, which makes me suspect he really was using PEDs and wasn't able to use them this time. So he's going to be Popeye without his spinach. Golovkin stops him in the late rounds. So there you go. You heard it from me. All right.
The beauty about boxing is it's not fought on paper. It's fought in the ring, so anything can happen. Any prediction here is going to be a solid one.
That's true.
Yeah, and that wouldn't surprise anybody, Dennis. I think your prediction, I wouldn't be shocked by that if that happened. I mean, that's the way this fight could be. They could roll that way very easily.
Yeah, man, this is going to be a fun one. Okay, so, hey, we were all treated to a couple of really interesting high-profile welterweight fights on Saturday, the first of which was Amir Khan's 12-round decision over Samuel Vargas in Manchester, England. During which both guys tasted the canvas in the early rounds. Khan went down once, Vargas twice. The other one was Showtime's really highly anticipated main event, which was the one you guys were talking about, Sean Porter against Danny Swift Garcia, and that went right down to the wire. Porter won a really close unanimous decision in that one. So let's talk about Khan Vargas first. Riza, Amir Khan is a rarity in the boxing world. He's got 4 losses on his record, 3 of them by knockout, and he's still a valid attraction in the sport because he's a supernova whenever he's on our TV screens. And you were talking about this, you were chattering about this during the fight. He's got a pair of the fastest hands in boxing history, which makes him a real nightmare for everybody he fights. But he's also flawed, all of which means he's never in a dull fight. And you pointed out those things when you were watching him beat Samuel Vargas on Saturday. Why is this guy still a thing in the welterweight division?
Well, I think part of it is he has he's come up through the ranks as a very, very young silver medalist, so he already had a lot of buzz when he turned pro. I think it's and maybe in slightly different ways, but his career in some ways reminds me of De La Hoya. Both guys had their start very young, had a lot of stardom on them when they did start. Probably have lost some of the bigger fights of their careers. Both of them had, tremendous hand speed and decent power, but, still had flaws in their own right. And Khan, his speed is devastating. I mean, I don't know where he ranks in terms of the fastest fighters of all time, but he's definitely up there. But I think in so many ways, I think that's his undoing at the same time. There's very few guys who have, the skill set and the athleticism, but have combined it with discipline and work ethic and all that. Mayweather's kind of the exception to that. Roy Jones was, a freak athlete and a half, but we saw kind of later in his career, as soon as he got a little older, his defense just didn't hold up because he never had to. He never had to have excellent defense because he relied so much on his athleticism. And Khan's the same way. Khan still makes the exact same mistakes he made, 10, 15 years ago, right? When he jabs, his right hand drops, and it's just I like Sam Vargas. He's a local Toronto guy, but in terms, he's not a top 10 fighter, right? No one would kind of put him up there, and that if he was able to kind of time a right hand well, then I think there's a bunch of fighters who could probably do the same thing. And I think Amir Khan, I think he's almost on the retirement circuit now. I think he's trying to look for obviously a couple of big money fights and then kind of call it a day. He's still marketable enough and good enough to obviously make those big fights. Kell Brook is the obvious one because I think Kell Brook is, and I think that's why they never made this fight 3-4 years ago. When Kell Brook fought Golovkin and Amir Khan fought Canelo, it was kind of a bizarre world where there was two logical fights that could happen between the four guys, and it didn't. But I think they knew that Brook and Khan was always going to be a viable fight. Like, as long as both guys were somewhat relative, they could easily sell that fight. I think that's kind of exactly where we are. Brook pulled out with an injury. Brook was supposed to actually fight Brendan Cook, who's now fighting, who's also a local Toronto guy, who's now fighting Jaime Munguia. And to be honest, I don't know if Kell Brook would have won that one. Kell Brook hasn't looked great since Golovkin beat him. He hasn't had a lot of fights. So I think him and Khan is still a very, very sellable affair. But it's one of those fights where it will be a spectacle. There'll be, a sold-out crowd. It'll be an entertaining fight. But in terms of the rankings, no one is going to think that either of these guys are really going to be able to make a dent against the, even though Kell Brook did beat Sean Porter, I think most expect a rematch to go very differently, especially after Porter's win last night. But Errol Spence has already knocked out Kell Brook, and I think we're seeing kind of a separation between the top guys in the division and the bottom guys, and I think that's what Porter's win was last night. Amir Khan, and it's amazing how in 2 rounds we kind of saw everything. We saw the good, the bad, and the ugly that has existed in Amir Khan's entire career. His speed is so devastating that Sam Vargas has zero answers for it. It's not so much the power, it's blinding speed, but he's always so upright and just staying in the pocket with, for a guy whose hand speed is that quick, it's a shame that you never kind of utilized his feet as much to match it. And his footwork was always kind of very subpar. And I think he was used to winning on such devastating speed. Why did he have to change? So, I know he's going for another run at a title. If he beats Kell Brook, then obviously I think he should get a shot against one of the top guys in the division, whether he wins or not. But I mean, there's a reason he's saying Kell Brook or Manny Pacquiao and not, Errol Spence or Thurman or Crawford. And it's not because I don't think he wants those fights. I think he understands at this point in his career, it's risk reward, and there's guaranteed money for a Kell Brook fight. There's guaranteed money for a Pacquiao fight. And I think you're kind of seeing a separated, kind of almost a separate division within the welterweight division. There's the guys who are kind of at the tail end of their career. And Amir Khan's only a couple years older than the rest of these guys. He's been around for a long time. He's got a lot of miles on him, right? Yep. I mean, ever since he turned pro. I mean, he was a silver medalist at 17, so he's kind of been in the limelight, and he hasn't had kind of time to grow into a pro. He was kind of a pro right away, and I think that's taking its toll. So he's still a thing because he's marketable, he's entertaining, and there's still big money fights out there for him. So I think he's going to have a couple of those, and then I think he'll call it a career.
Mm-hmm. Travis, it's not realistic, is it, to imagine Amir Khan in the ring these days with any of the top guys? Spence, Thurman, Porter, Garcia, Crawford, Pacquiao. What gives this guy his buoyancy?
Well, you know what? All of those guys you said, I do agree that he doesn't do much against him, except Pacquiao. I think that Pacquiao has faded just enough that I can see Amir Khan in the ring with Pacquiao, and I can see Amir Khan pulling off a win because I don't think Manny Pacquiao is a devastating one-punch knockout guy, and that's been Amir Khan's kryptonite, is guys that can punch. So guys like Errol Spence and although even Danny Garcia proved that they can knock out Amir Khan. So I think Amir Khan, like Riz was saying, I think he's one of the fastest combination punchers that I've probably seen out there. He's at least top 5 in of all time of how fast he puts his punches together and how quick he is. The guy really does have lightning fast speed, and that's what's gotten him by for so long, is just that how incredibly fast he is. But I see him, he did the right thing because he is looking for paydays now, guys. I remember, I think he was like 28 years old. I forget how old he is now, but he was about 28, and I remember him saying that he wanted to retire. I think he was 26. He's like, I'm going to retire by the time I'm 28. So I see him cashing in right now. I don't see him seriously competing with any of the very top guys like the Errol Spences and even the Keith Thurmans and those guys. I don't see him competing with them, but I do see him, because he's entertaining, because he's talented, I see him cashing out with a big-time fight like a Manny Pacquiao. That would be a big fight, guys. I would watch that. That's enticing to me. And the fact that they used to be sparring partners and they used to train with Freddie Roach, that's why the fight never happened previously, but he doesn't train there anymore. So I can see that fight happening, and it would be a great fight. It's a fight that Amir Khan could win even. So I would watch it, and I think Amir Khan is still sellable, and that's why it's exciting. But is he one of the top pound for pound in the nation? No, by no means at all. He's done faded from that. But he's definitely capable, though.
John, do you pick Khan over either Pacquiao or Brook?
I think Brook would beat him. I do. I think Brook would get real physical. Khan doesn't like it. He still looks to the referee for help. He's always done that.
He does,
I think Brook would come in. Yeah, Brook would come in there physical and push him around, get him out of his game. And Khan, you guys are right. Khan, even at, I think he's 31, Travis, even at 31, where you might think somebody might be losing a little of the reflexes, he hasn't lost anything as far as his hand speed, his foot speed. I mean, he's a hell of an athlete. I think Brook might be able to stop him in that fight. But Pacquiao, a fight against Pacquiao is the best fight. You got to give it to Amir Khan. He's at least realistic.
Yeah.
A fight with Pacquiao would sell a ton of tickets. We all know that. We'd all watch it. It would be compelling. They used to spar, as Travis said. Their sparring sessions were intense, very competitive. I mean, that was a few years ago, but still, doesn't matter. Pacquiao might be 39, Khan's 31. They're still going to be just as competitive. Just they want to win just as bad. That fight, Khan could win it. That's true. But you know what? I think, again, see, when I was watching it yesterday, like the guys already said, Khan still makes the same kind of mistakes, and as he gets a little tired, he's even more susceptible. I mean, he got staggered in the 11th round badly. He got wobbled with a left hook. And it's a good thing it wasn't a 15-round fight. It reminded me a little bit, Dennis, of his fight with Chris Algieri, where he got off to a fast start, and then Algieri was really coming on, the last few rounds and putting a whooping on him. Khan won, but I don't think Amir Khan was too unhappy when that fight ended yesterday. Old Samuel Vargas was really gutsy. He was hanging in there really like grim death, giving Khan all he could ask for. So the Pacquiao fight would be more of a toss-up, perhaps an edge to Khan, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say at this point. Khan would probably get off to a fast start, and then we'd see what would happen. But he is exciting. He's like watching a fighting roller coaster to me because, you think, wow, God, this guy is so good, but he's so vulnerable. He's susceptible. And that right hand that put him down was the same kind of right hand that Canelo knocked him out with. Vargas fainted to the body and then came up with the head, and bam, down he went. So he's flawed but fascinating. I'll say that. But man, there's a lot of guys that would kill to be able to be as fast as him with his hands and all that. I mean, what some God-given talent there. But I think the guys are right. I think he's trying to get as much money as he can, get out of there, and then maybe become some kind of a reality star again in London or something. But why not? He's still got skills, so he's figuring the best way to go out, and I think he's being very smart about it.
One more about this one, and this one's for you, Riz, and then we're going to go to Travis real quick because I know he's got to go get his take on the Porter Garcia fight. But I think Amir Khan, if you asked him, thinks he's a Hall of Famer. Do you think he is?
That's a difficult question. I think if we're going by what the standard is right now for Hall of Famers, then I would say yeah. Because there's a lot of guys who are in the Hall of Fame, and it's not necessarily about, for a lot of guys, just about entertainment. And I think, we talked about Arturo Gatti. Arturo Gatti's was a tremendous fighter. He was a titleist, but no one ever put him in the elite class. But he was elite in terms of entertainment, and he was kind of must-watch TV, not just must-watch sports, but must-watch TV. So I think in some ways, if we're going to go, if that's the base, I think Khan is definitely above that, because Khan is, people forget, despite, yes, he's chinny and yada yada, but he beat Zab Judah. He beat he had a tremendous fight against Maidana when a lot of people thought he wouldn't even take that fight, and he scored a body shot knockdown in the first round. So he was, and Maidana obviously gave Mayweather hell. Maidana beat Broner, so he beat some, I'd say elite fighters at the time. He the setback against Garcia, he fought recklessly, but he was dominating that fight up until that point. So Khan always had the ability to beat everyone, absolutely everyone. I maintain that, with the exception of maybe Mayweather. I think he still had the ability to beat so many guys, and I think we're going to look at his career as, I think in some ways you're going to look at his career as he didn't fill the potential that he could have been, because I think he could have been an all-time great with the skill set and the natural abilities that he had. But he kind of became a celebrity in some ways, and I think in a lot of ways that hurts, because it takes, there's distractions there. The guys it's a fine line to walk when guys become famous and they can maintain celebrity status, but still the discipline of being a fighter. So I'd say if we're basing that on what, some of the guys who have already been in the Hall of Fame, based on that, I'm going to say, I think Amir Khan is definitely a Hall of Famer.
Okay, Travis, you boldly picked Sean Porter to beat Danny Garcia. The rest of us were kind of leaning the other way, or we weren't sure, or we were wishy-washy about it. Why did you see it coming?
The fact is, as a fighter myself, Sean Porter's style is it's a disgusting style for boxers to fight, because and I say disgusting just meaning because he makes it so hard on fighters. And if you're a really slick boxer, you better be in the best shape of your whole entire life, because you can just box him, spin him, and box him and spin him, but you're going to use so much energy. And Sean Porter, all credit to this guy. He's an animal. He's a dog in him. He's got so much willpower that it really is. He'll be on your chest the entire fight. You better bring it mentally, physically, everything, or Sean Porter will take your heart and he'll take that win. And that's what he does. He's just a hard fighter to fight. And that's the only reason I made that prediction, because I know that Danny Garcia he's a counterpuncher for the most part, and he's got a lot of power. He's got that freakish power that we don't really see until he knocks people out. But I just thought Sean Porter was going to be on his chest the whole time. Wanted a little more, and I do think Danny Garcia is not as hungry as he used to be, because he's a little later in his career. So that's the only reason I made that prediction, and it definitely came true, because Sean Porter is that guy. He's going to give every top fighter out there in the world a tough fight. Nobody is going to starch a Sean Porter, period. That's just because he's got so much willpower. He's got so much conditioning, and he's not exciting to watch. It really is, and that's why I say it's kind of a disgusting style to watch, because he's just on your chest. He does got talent, but he's not the most skilled guy out there. But he has the biggest heart, he has the biggest will, and that's why he wins fights. And, props to him, because that's not an easy way to win. That's not an easy way to make a living either, because he's in dog fights every single fight that he's in. You never see a pretty or an easy fight for a Sean Porter. Therefore, I think that his career span is going to be a little shortened because of that. But so far, he's done amazing. You got to give him so much credit just because of the fight that he's been in. Even the fights that he's lost, they've all been really close fights. So Sean Porter's going to give all the top guys problems. And will he beat them? Not sure. But he's going to give them a damn good fight. And that's just a Sean Porter. And that's why I predicted for him to beat Danny Garcia. And I got lucky, and I was right.
Hey, John, we all knew Porter was going to bring the pressure. That's what he does. But you know what? I thought he also fought a really smart fight, and I thought he was really well trained for this. I thought he pretty much matched Danny Garcia as a counterpuncher, which is what Garcia does. That's his bread and butter. What were your impressions of the way Porter fought him?
Well, I was thinking when you were talking about how earlier we were talking about who we were leaning towards, and I think that's true. We were mostly, except Travis, we're leaning towards Garcia. But, Dennis, after we had him on the show, speaking of Sean, and interviewed him, that's when I started to believe that Sean was going to win, and I believe so much. I'm such a big-time gambler that I put down money that he would win. I'm not going to tell you how much because it's ridiculous, but he did. And because of the reasons I thought, because he was talking, if you remember during that interview, he was saying he was going to surprise. And he did, but the funny thing was is because the way he came out in the beginning, he was boxing more, but he to win, he basically had to do what he does, like Travis was saying, get in your grill, force you to do things, be a very annoying, he's a very annoying fighter. I mean, he doesn't even let you breathe. He's like we used to say when I used to play basketball. You'd come out of when we were playing a certain team, their defense was so good, you'd come out of the locker room and they'd already be right there, right on you. And that's how Sean, that's how Sean is. I mean, he fights that way, and it's obviously very effective. And the other thing he said, and I think is true too, he didn't really mean it in a bad way. He just said he was more intelligent. And Danny Garcia kept saying, no, I'm the more intelligent fighter. No, actually, I think Sean and his dad, Ken, they showed more intelligence because their game plan, they had a game plan, an A and a B game plan, where they started a way where, I'm sure most people thought that Sean would go right after Danny and get right on his chest, but no, he was boxing in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So maybe it might not have been as effective, but it certainly surprised Danny Garcia and kept him guessing, I think, at times. So when Sean reverted back to Sean, he was doing both. And he was using his jab so effectively. And that showed you, that was what Sean was talking about too during the interview, was that he had studied Danny so much and he was convinced he could beat him. So that was what I was really impressed by. I mean, we read about fighters who prepare and they train and everything, but Sean and his father, they really, really prepared. And Sean wasn't tired at all. I mean, a minute, the bell rang for round 12, he could have probably went 40 rounds. He was in such great condition, and his determination, and that's the other factor. Like Travis said, I asked myself, because I wrote an article about it, who wants it more? And I answered, and I said, I think Sean Porter wants this more, especially when I heard that he had he had been dreaming about the WBC belt since he was a kid. But it was a hell of a fight, a good fight, not a fight of the year candidate like some people, but exciting at points. And I just think Sean Porter out-hustled Danny, and Danny can get lackadaisical, and that it hurt him. And he's got some decisions in his career that were very, and Mauricio Herrera is one that always bugs me, that were very iffy. So kind of evening out on him right now, but he's skilled, but he's a counterpuncher, and sometimes he waits too long. And against a guy like Sean Porter, you can't keep waiting because he'll out-hustle you. And that's what I thought he was doing. He was out-hustling him, outworking him, and he got the decision, and I thought it was a fair decision.
You know what? Both guys are trained by their fathers, and I got the impression, Riz, that this fight was their Super Bowl. Kenny Porter and especially Angel Garcia seemed even more emotional and animated than usual. It's really interesting to me to contrast them with guys like Virgil Hunter and Joe Goosen and Abel Sanchez and Freddie Roach and Robert Garcia, who were very calm and measured in that corner. What was your take on the dads? Did they come off as guys who know their sons better than anybody else, or was some of that emotion, maybe especially in Angel's corner, counterproductive?
I think Angel's in some ways has been how, I don't know, I think in some ways he knows his son very well, and that, especially when he was kind of, I think the Khan fight was all from Angel Garcia. Danny was still very, very almost shy up until that point, and Angel kind of got in Amir's head, and he got reckless, and Danny caught him, and then Danny he came into his own. But yesterday I didn't think that was the case. Sean Porter, I think, and his father, they're kind of almost one and the same. I think Kenny knows Sean incredibly well. Sean's never, even all his losses, he never really got, he was never really embarrassed, or, all his losses were fairly close. The Kell Brook fight, I mean, it was still, he probably lost 7-5, 8-4, but he was never in a bad fight, or it looked like he was embarrassed, or, anything of that sort. So I think those guys know each other well, and I don't think, where Angel, I feel like, always had to almost speak up for Danny. And I don't think that was ever the case with Sean and Kenny Porter, because those guys, I think Sean does his talking in the ring, right? It's amazing how one of the guys with the brightest smile and, most cheerful interviews, but then you in the ring, he's like a Rottweiler, and it's just, he's an animal. He's like uncaged. So it's always kind of funny how that works. And I don't think Kenny really needs to see anything. And it's funny because I've noticed, if you guys noticed early in the week, Angel Garcia said something like, before I've said some awful things and yada yada. And I think it's because he saw Kenny Porter on the other side. He's like, yeah, I can't say anything to this guy. Kenny Porter's a big dude, and Sean can fight, and I don't know what Kenny's record was as a professional, or if he fought as a professional, but I wouldn't. I don't care what age you are. I don't think you want to get in a fight with Kenny Porter at all. He's probably the most dangerous out of those four guys, right? It's funny how like some father-son duels work incredibly well. Some have not. Shane Mosley and his father kind of had falling outs and then kind of got back together. Roy Jones and his father, same idea. And then you look at Joe and Enzo Kawasaki, and that to me is probably one of the greatest father-son relationships, maybe even sports history, not just boxing history. Because Enzo was not a boxing trainer by trade. He was pretty much a fan, and then became his son's trainer. So it's amazing how for some guys it works incredibly well. And I think in some ways, some fighters are maybe just too scared to make that change because there's a certain level of comfort there. There's a certain level of honesty, and they understand both. All father-son relationships. Usually, the son would understand that the father's always kind of looking out for their best interests, at least, and that may not be the case for another trainer. So again, very interesting, and I think for Angel, I don't think Danny has to do anything different though. I think we saw with Danny heading into the fight, we know what kind of fighter Danny is. We just knew that he's not going to be able to outwill Porter. That's just not going to happen. But he had to have a little more will to use his skill to get the win. And I think that's exactly how we saw it going. There was times where you looked at Danny Garcia and he was taking a back step where he kind of shouldn't have or wouldn't have, and you saw Kenny Porter and Sean Porter. They know how they fight. Everyone knows it's not a secret. It's going to make things very, very difficult. If you're going to beat Porter, you got to bring it, and you got to your conditioning has to be top notch. And that's how Thurman beat him. Thurman's will was up there when Porter beat him. So hopefully we'll see Errol Spence and Porter, and it'll be interesting to see how that works. And it'll be interesting to see what Kenny and Sean have a plan to how to attack Spence, because as great as Spence is, he's never seen anything like Porter. But that being said, I don't think Porter's ever seen anything like Spence. So looking forward to that fight for sure.
Okay, John. Yes, Porter and Spence want to fight each other, and they say it's going to be an easy fight to make. Spence, of course, is thought to be on a collision course with Mikey Garcia, and Robert Garcia, Mikey's brother and trainer, doesn't want that fight with Spence. He wants Lomachenko instead. What's your gut feeling about all that? Are we likely to see Spence-Porter fight rather than Spence-Mikey?
Well, I think we are definitely, Spence and Porter. I do. I believe when they were talking in the ring last night, they were classy and competitive and all that stuff, and I believed them. I thought, they're going to fight each other, and that is really a fascinating fight because if anybody can maybe move Errol Spence back a step, it would be Sean Porter with his aggressiveness, and that's what he'll need to do to have a chance to beat Errol Spence is move him. Get him to he fights great going downhill. Let's stop him in his tracks a few times. Let's not get him comfortable on the outside. Let's get in his grill. Let's do our thing. And it would be a hell of a challenge for Sean Porter, but they'll come up with a plan. I do believe though that that's going to happen, Dennis. It feels right. I think the fans would love it the way they roared last night when Porter mentioned it. I think it's going to happen. Errol Spence, the crowd was interesting because they were cheering him every time they showed him, and I think it's because he wants to fight everybody. All the top guys, he wants to fight them. There's no tricks, there's no games, there's no ridiculous statements. He wants to fight all the best fighters, and he had said he would fight the winner of this fight. So I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be an interesting fight because Porter might take Spence to places he's never been, and then we'll learn some more about Spence that we don't quite know yet. It's the thing about boxing, Dennis. Guys are really good, and we know they're really good and they're really talented. But in a lot of sports, you really find out how somebody is when they're in the deep waters. Do they drown or do they come through? And that's the one thing about boxing. It's just you against the other guy, and you sink or swim. And we're going to find out. I obviously would give the edge to Spence just because he's so talented, and it seems to be just getting better and better. But you never want to underestimate Sean Porter. His determination alone will make it a good fight. So, I think that fight happens, but probably next year.
Okay, so here's another psychology question for you, Riz. If Keith Thurman, in his private moments, do you think he thinks he can beat Spence and Crawford?
I mean, I think every fighter must, right? I mean, I can't think of a fighter that says no, but that was the first Keith Thurman sighting in quite a while.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you guys remember this. His comeback fight was supposed to be in May, and now we're in September, and we haven't even heard anything about anything next. So I think at the earliest it's going to be January, and I think that would be pretty much 2 years since he fought Garcia. I think the division has just went beyond him. I can't think of a way that Keith Thurman's ever going to be the same, or he's going to be as competitive in the division. It's just, you can't go that long with inactivity. I mean, unless you're hoping that just every fighter kind of beats one another and then you can come back and take over. But I just don't think that's the case. I think Porter probably beats him in a rematch because the first fight was just that close. And I think Errol Spence is, I mean, he's the truth. We all agree with that. I think him and Crawford just separated themselves as the two best guys in that division. And even though Porter's going to give everyone hell, I think, once you go through Porter, I feel like life just seems easier, right? I think if Errol Spence can handle Porter, especially if he can stop him, that would be a statement. Then I don't think he's going to think much of Thurman, to be honest. Thurman is still a unique athlete with speed and power, but he's always been reckless. We've seen times where he's been hurt by body shots and have slowed down a little bit towards the end. And I don't know. And again, we didn't see him. I saw him in they showed him on screen briefly yesterday. To me, though, he didn't look in great shape. And I know it's a little hard to say because the guy's wearing a suit. Even then, there's a video of him online. Showtime Sports posted an interview of him. And I know it's kind of hard to judge, but he doesn't, I wouldn't say he's at like 30 pounds or anything like that, but he just definitely doesn't look in phenomenal shape at all. So it's not, Andre Ward talked about that in the, in the HBO card, what layoffs do for guys. He's like, if you're a guy who's still hitting the gym a couple times a week and you stay away from alcohol and kind of, unhealthy foods for the most part and all that, relatively speaking, then I don't think it's that big of a deal. Thurman's been married during that time, and I don't know, I guess you and John can probably speak about this. Seems like there's a freshman 15 when it comes to the first year of marriage, right? So maybe that's what Thurman's packing on right now, but I don't know. I just think 2 years off at the age of 27 or 28, I just think that's like the worst possible time you can have time off. And even though I think, I'll say this, I think in some ways he has a better chance of beating Crawford than he does Errol Spence. And to me, that's just a size thing. Thurman was at one point 154-pounder before he kind of settled on welterweight. Spence has pretty much been the same thing. I want to say Spence fought as an Olympian, I think, at a slightly higher division. I think Porter did as well. Porter's had a couple few fights. I think Porter was a lot bigger too. Where Crawford has come up in weight, and even though Crawford, I still think he probably walked around 155, 160. The other guys are just significantly bigger, and I think where Crawford still hasn't really fought an elite welterweight yet, I think Thurman already has, and even though he's already won, and there's been other guys that he's kind of went through, I just don't think Crawford has done that. So I give Thurman a better chance at Crawford than I do against Spence. But again, he's got to get back in the ring. I mean, last March was his last fight. He's now approaching 30 in November. Back then he was 28 and just turned 28. So those are two very bad years to take off. And you got to think he's going to have a tune-up first and then come back. So realistically, he won't fight anyone top level until next summer. And by that point, you're looking at 2.5 years. I just can't see. I think the division has just moved on. And I think he's just kind of getting phased out. I think Spence looks like he's going to take on Porter. Spence does that. You got to think Crawford is coming up next. Crawford is fighting Benavidez, maybe end up fighting Pacquiao after. But you got to think that's kind of the fight that anyone's headed towards. And Thurman's almost becoming an afterthought. So if he doesn't make his comeback soon, I can't see him staying relevant in that division.
I think all three of those guys look at Keith Thurman as being, at best, fourth best in that division. John, where does all this leave Danny Garcia? He looked really gutted by that loss to me when Jim Gray was interviewing him after the fight. He looked like his heart had been taken, and I could see him I could really envision him losing interest in all the hard work that's needed to keep running with the big dogs in the welterweight division. But at the same time, I see Angel Garcia as a guy who really lives vicariously through his son, and he might not be anywhere near ready for this ride to end, and might really get the whip out to try. But yeah, I think Danny, he may the light bulb might be going out on him.
Yeah, he looked, as the English like to say, gutted, right? I mean, when he was in the ring, he just was so disappointed. And as I said earlier, he's got some gift decisions in his career. Fighters don't ever see it that way, though. He thought he did enough to win. We of course, expected him to say that, but not very many people thought he did. I mean, it's possible, but the fact is that, yeah, his edge, he seems to have lost a little of his edge. He's a dad now, too, and I always had a funny thing with Danny because I thought he was good, but I never thought he was as good as some people thought, because he seemed like he would fight at the level of his competition sometimes. He looked bored in there. When he was fighting Brandon Rhea last year or earlier this year, he was letting Rhea hit him with punches that shouldn't have been happening, and Angel was going crazy in the corner like he usually does, and you just wonder how much he's really into it anymore. I think he is and he isn't. He likes to fight still. He's done it all his life, but he also likes to live, I think, a little bit. And he can't retire or anything like that after this. He has to give it one more try at one of the top guys. But, he's in a funny situation right now because of his career is kind of in a flux, and he has to figure what he's going to do because what does he do? Does he fight a guy rated like 10th now and try to get another shot at one of the top guys? That's probably what he's going to have to do. And I believe that, he ought to think about why he lost, why he's lost 2 of his last 3 fights, I believe, and he lost to Thurman. And it's because, okay, he's got a good style, but he needs to be more active. And maybe he thinks he is, but he needs to do some real soul searching on his career and where he's going. He obviously will never dump his dad. I was watching an interview with him, and he said that if anything happened to his dad, he's done, as far as boxing goes. So that won't happen. But I have to say something about what you said earlier. I think Angel Garcia, who's always very emotional in the corner, he was his usual self, perhaps a little bit more. And actually, the guy that was more emotional was Ken. I think Ken, like Sean, is super competitive and wanted that win so badly that he raised his voice more than I had ever seen him do it against Sean. But I thought that was fascinating. But if Danny retires, Angel is going to be kind of lost. And as Ken told you and me, Ken Porter trains a lot of other fighters, and he's trained a lot of fighters in his career. And Angel basically has just trained Danny, and this has been his dream for his son, and he's done a good job. But of course, his son also has some real talent, so it's going to be up to him what he wants to do next. But Danny's not going anywhere. I think you won't see him again until next year, and he'll come back all fired up, and he'll say the decision was bogus, and he's rejuvenated and all that stuff. I mean, they love it too much. But where he is, he's below everybody else, and he's going to have to get another big fight. He's going to have to win impressively. Who knows? Maybe they'll put him in there with somebody that he can blow out in a couple of rounds. I don't know. Like I said, he's in kind of a in-between position right now, and it's going to be fascinating to see what his team decides to do because he's got options, but where does he want to go? And maybe he's going to say, look, I don't want to do anything for a while. I just want to think about it. And that's probably what he's going to do, Dennis. We probably won't hear anything from Danny for obviously the rest of the year. And then next year, maybe when Keith Thurman comes back or something, he might talk about fighting Keith Thurman again. But he's got some decisions to make.
Last topic for you guys. We had the legendary boxing journalist Thomas Hauser, 2-time Pulitzer Prize nominee, on last week's show, and he broke another really interesting story on Friday. The United States Anti-Doping Agency, USADA, has administered 1,501 tests on 128 boxers for performance-enhancing drugs since 2010, the last 8 years. The last one that tested positive was Eric Morales in 2012. All those tests, and actually the only one who tested positive was Eric Morales. Out of 1,501 tests, one positive test, one. In all those tests over an 8-year span, only one of those 1,501 came back positive. By contrast, 4% of the fighters tested by VADA, the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association, was determined to be doping. They found 4% guilty of doping. I like to give people benefit of the doubt, but man, all athletes have a built-in motive for using PEDs, and then it comes down to their moral compass. And to me, it's absurd to think that only 4% of boxers are dopers. There are probably more kindergarten teachers on PEDs nowadays than 4%. So, Riz, if USADA is finding one dirty fighter out of 1,501 tests, they're not really trying, are they?
I don't know what this test is then, unless they're just asking, did you take any drugs, and they say no. Outside of that, I don't understand how rigorous this test must be, right? It just seems like a joke. I mean, I could come up with, I feel like I could come up with a better drug testing policy than this with my zero science background. So you see a difference with, USADA and VADA, and that's why I don't remember the last time I heard anything kind of relevant from USADA. And you got to feel that when Morales must have tested positive, he must have definitely taken something that he didn't know about, because it seems like it's almost impossible to get caught by them. I don't understand what their policy is, because how can they pick up on so little and another organization is picking up on so much? That means there's a drastic difference between what they're testing for and how they're doing the testing. I'm curious what the results say for a lot of these things, because I guess the issue is with some of the tests coming up positive might be, I wouldn't say too harsh, but some of them are, like Canelo having tested positive for something that's in contaminated beef. And even though there's, opinions on that one way or the other, I guess their testing is clearly a lot more rigorous than USADA's. I really don't know what USADA is actually testing then. Because it seems like, a lot of fighters come out, and all athletes, when they're tested positive, they say, I didn't take it knowingly, yada, yada. But, things are on a banned list for a reason. You got to so I don't know why certain things are on the VADA ban list but not on the USADA ban list. I don't understand how they, I don't know how detailed their ban list is. It must just be steroids. Like, that could be the only thing that's kind of listed on there. It doesn't seem like it's very. If that's the case, then you got to ask, what's the point of it?
Yeah, John, what is the point of it? You catch one guy out of 1,500. There's something real wrong there. It's almost like they're not trying.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. Obviously, they are considered a joke by. I've heard that from people in boxing. Say, they just go through the motions, and obviously that's true. And that might be the criteria. It was funny, but Riz might be right. Did you take any steroids? No, I did not. Okay, you're good. So it could be something like that. It's not. It can't be that stupid. But with what they've uncovered, there has to be something wrong here. And everybody pretty much who's serious about this says that VADA is the more serious test. Again, back to Sean Porter, who's been dominating the show, he was telling us about how they were showing up and testing him, right, Dennis, right before he fought Danny Garcia, and how they'd show up unannounced, and you basically have to drop what you're doing, and they go home with you, and you give them a urine specimen. That's how it is. So obviously our statistics are better. They're more serious. If that, and obviously I believe Thomas Howard's there. I respect him so much. He's a great writer. He's uncovered something that's significant, but sadly not surprising. And we hear so many things about steroids in boxing, comments like, "Oh, everybody's doing it." That's not true. We know not everybody's doing it, but it's not like one out of 128 or whatever you said. So with these statistics, you just figure they ought to just say forget it and just let VADA handle the whole thing. They pretty much do anyway, and go from there. But that was an eye opener when I read that when Thomas wrote that. I was like, oh boy, I don't think they're taking it very seriously anymore. That's just my opinion.
Kudos to Thomas Hauser. That story was published on thesweetscience.com, and we've got it published on our website too as well. You can find it there. Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, John J. Responti are our expert analysts. All three of them say Canelo's going to win. I'm telling you, Golovkin's going to do it. But what do I know? Thank you, guys. You guys have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, guys.
All right. Take care, guys.
Paul McLaughlin, our British correspondent, still on vacation. Europeans do that stuff a lot more than Americans, you know. And so we're going to take a short break and come back with a true boxing legend, Gentleman Gerry Cooney. So do not touch that dial. We'll be right back.
If you like the Ringside Boxing Show, you're going to love the website, ringsideboxingshow.com.
What are you doing?
Hi, I'm Dennis Taylor, host of the Ringside Boxing Show, where since 2008 we have been continuously sponsored by Garcia Boxing, the first family of the Sweet Science on California's beautiful Central Coast. Trainers Max and Sam Garcia and ring strategist Dean Familton are regarded among the most knowledgeable in the game. And Kathy Garcia, who manages all Garcia boxing fighters, is renowned for her integrity and career guidance, having taken 2 boxers to #1 world rankings. Together they comprise one of the most respected teams in the sport. Learn more by calling 831-261-3214 or send them an email at garciaboxing25@aol.com. I'm Dennis Taylor, co-author of the Amazon bestseller Intimate Warfare, the true story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward boxing trilogy. You know, writing this book was a labor of love for John J. Responti and myself. We enjoyed every minute of the process and considered it a privilege to tell the tale of one of the most electrifying boxing trilogies in the history of this sport. Intimate Warfare traces the collision course of Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward from their earliest days through their 3 epic fights, as well as the aftermath of this great rivalry, which culminated in one of the greatest friendships in boxing. Intimate Warfare has received a 4.5-star rating from readers and was endorsed by Hall of Famers Harold Letterman and Joe Cortez and 2-time Trainer of the Year Virgil Hunter. Our foreword was written by Ray Boom Boom Mancini, another one of the greatest blood and guts fighters of our time. Get your copy today at Amazon.com.
Oh boy, is this great! Well, you look at what is certainly a spectacle here at Caesar's Palace. This is Gerry Cooney, the challenger, coming into the ring. I've talked to you on several occasions about this kind of thing. What are the thoughts that a fighter has at this juncture?
So coming out, especially for the challenger, this is the biggest moment of your life, and you want to win.
He has been very calm throughout the week. I would have to think now, Ray, the butterflies have got to just be churning in Gerry Cooney.
Oh, without question, but at this point now, an opponent is close to the heart of Cooney.
Welcome back to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm Dennis Taylor with John J. Responti, and today's featured guest is unquestionably one of the most popular heavyweight fighters of our lifetime, John.
You bet.
Gentleman Gerry Cooney fought from 1977 to 1990. He compiled a 28-3 record that included 2 world title fights. And the one that immediately comes to people's minds is the clip I just played of his 13-round battle with the great Larry Holmes, who was 40-0 when they met at Caesar's Palace in '82. Gerry Cooney beat Jimmy Young, Ron Lyle, Ken Norton, a lot of other guys to earn that shot at the lineal world title. And 5 years later, he fought for the title again against Michael Spinks, and he finished out his career in 1990 when he was way past his prime after a 3-year layoff with a loss to George Foreman. Foreman, by the way, ranked Cooney as one of the 3 hardest punchers he ever faced, along with Lyle and Cleveland Williams. And one night on The Tonight Show, he told Johnny Carson that Gerry Cooney was #1 on that list. So in retirement, Cooney was one of the founders of Fighters Initiative for Support and Training, FIST, which was an organization that helps retired boxers find employment, among other things. And he also was involved with the Joint Association of Boxers, JAB, which was a union for boxers, the very first one. And he's also been a supporter over the years for Hands Are Not for Hitting, which is a program that fights domestic violence. And last but not least, Gerry is the co-host of At the Fights, which is on Fridays and Mondays on it's a real popular boxing podcast with Randy Gordon on Sirius XM Radio. Gerry, welcome back to the Ringside Boxing Show. It's been too long. Thanks for taking some time for us, man.
It's great to be back with you guys, and I got to tell you, while I was listening to Ray Leonard talk about what it's like with the butterflies, I felt like I was 25 again.
Really? Good.
Yeah. It's amazing, but fighters, when you watch a fight again, you remember every second of it. I can't remember my keys when I go out in the morning, but I remember every second of the fight.
How big were those butterflies then? Were they right?
You know what? I just wanted the bell to ring. It was so, distasteful, whether it was King or whoever made it that way. Larry Holmes and I are great friends today. We're together all year long. We talk to each other on the phone once a week, twice a week. We make appearances together. But it was so distasteful with the racism, and it was just a really horrible thing. And so I was so angry at him. Like I didn't care. It was the first time in my life I didn't have butterflies. I just wanted to hit him. Mm-hmm. And listen. He was one of the best heavyweights of all, top 5 in the history of the game. And I got a chance to get in there with him, and I went 13 rounds with not the best of training.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. We'll get into some of that in just a little bit. Hey, when John talked to you earlier this week, you were playing in a golf tournament, and last time we had you on the show, I think you were down to a 6 handicap. How's your game today?
Well, let me tell you something. It's going up.
Is it?
Oh. Listen, I was down to a 3, but to keep a 3, I had to leave my wife and my kids. You got to practice, and so I go out have a good time. I had my bicep about 5 months ago ripped off my arm while I was boxing. It snapped. When the ball joints go in the car, you change the ball joints, but when the muscle goes, you got to have it reattached. So I got to reattach. I'm back hitting the balls again. Feel good, have great days and bad days. It's like life.
Yeah.
So we're so lucky. We're so lucky to be involved. I played this morning in the rain a little bit, and life is good.
You ever had a hole-in-one?
I had 2.
Whoa.
And probably like about 30 eagles.
Jeez. Oh, man.
I just missed an eagle this morning. I was on into about 12, 13 feet, and I just missed it for eagle. But, man, this is life. Life is great. It goes too fast.
Yeah,
I'm glad to be in it.
It occurred to me, what a lot of boxing fans might not realize is, since you were an orthodox fighter, is that you're a natural lefty, right?
I was a lefty. I am lefty, but when I first started boxing, my coach, he didn't know about righty and lefty, and so it just was always comfortable for me, and it turned out to be such a blessing. My left hook was unbelievable, and my jab was great, and, listen, I feel so proud of what I did. Did I make mistakes? Yeah, we all do, and I survived, and I'm glad to be able to talk to you guys about it today.
We mentioned that you were one of the people that was behind FIST, which was an organization that tried to help retired fighters, and also JAB, which was that first union for boxers. Those types of organizations have really been difficult to sustain. How come?
Well, you know what? It was always so simple. If they took $1 from every ticket around the country or the world for every fight and they put it into a fund, there wouldn't be no problems.
Right.
Guys could catch up, but unfortunately the fight game is the managers want them to stay dumb. So they keep fighting and they don't educate themselves. And so, then they become 32, 33 and they become not challenging for the title, but now they're sparring partners, now they're club fighters. And then what happens, unfortunately, is that the manager is now working with the young guy. and the old guy gets thrown out to be by himself. And that's been the history of, I guess, all sports, really. And it's a shame. But listen, I wasn't that involved with JAB. I had a big organization in FIST, and I do charities my whole life. You know why? Because I was blessed. I came from a very bad background. I got, a lot of bad stuff happened to me where I grew up, and I get the opportunity today to help those kids make a change, and hopefully one of them will make it, or two of them will make it, and that's why we do these things. That's why professional athletes have a pleasure of going and hanging out, telling stories, and raising money for these causes.
That's really good. So what do you think, Gerry, it's going to take to create something really formidable? An organization that protects fighters, which I'm sure we all agree is so needed, active and retired. Somewhere, you think that could happen somewhere down the line? You got
to hope so. You got to hope so. Unfortunately, the cruel statistics are that 99% of fighters, when they finish, they end up broke. Yeah. Now, that didn't happen for me because I had two managers that couldn't stand each other, so I had one watch the other. And then they actually jumped into bed together when I fought Holmes and co-promoted the fight with Don King. But listen, it's a tough world out there. It's a jungle. Tarzan swung in from the vine and said, "Jay, make me a martini." She said, "What's come over you?" She says, "It's a jungle out there." And people don't understand that the window for fighters is very short. And I've seen it every day. The guys that grow up, they're going to be great. They're going to be champion. Then they're not going to be champion. Then they become an opponent. Then they become a sparring partner. And before you know it, they're catching punches. They can't talk. And you know the story, how it ends up. But we need something. $1 a ticket around the world put into a fund. Do we need the government involved? I don't know. Something has to change. Something.
That's a great idea. The heavyweight division today, Gerry, is kind of revival these days. To Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, all of whom are undefeated. What's your opinion of the talent level of the division right now? Are these guys the real thing, or are they only like mediocre?
I got to tell you, when Anthony Joshua got up against Klitschko, he proved something to me as a young kid like that. Then I heard stories he got knocked out a couple of times in training camp. The word travels around. He's a good fighter. Deontay Wilder is a murderous puncher. If he hits you, you go.
Yeah.
But they both don't take it so well.
Yeah.
So, if you remember, Wilder got hit by the Polish guy in the Garden, or I think it was the Garden, or Brooklyn, wherever it was, and he buckled. And he got hurt by Ortiz. He recovered fine, though.
Yeah.
And, if Ortiz wasn't so old and he had a little bit more endurance, it could have been different.
Yeah.
But whatever's to be said, Wilder took him out of there. That's never been done before. So, listen, it's a pick-em fight as far as I'm concerned right now. And the heavyweight division is forming. Listen, the fight game is forming again. And they got great fights in so many divisions. It's deep with talent. I think overall boxing is deeper with talent now than it was when we were fighting.
Yeah, and that's the vibe that we kind of get too. And we're wondering if it's just internet or, all the publicity they get nowadays and all the TV outlets, or
Let me tell you something. I'm telling you, I follow it. I watch it. I know the game. I see the guys. I see what they're doing. There's some great fights out there if they get made. And I'm not saying that Canelo and Triple G is going to be a great fight. I think they're both scared of each other. And
really?
In the first fight, I do. I believe that. It wasn't a great fight. Let me tell you a story. I had Abel Sanchez on my radio show, and I said, Abel, can I ask you a question? You fought Canelo Alvarez. You never cut the ring off. Triple G followed him around. You know what he told me?
Yep.
Well, I didn't know he was going to box. Okay, but aren't you supposed to be prepared for that?
Yeah. That's
cut the ring off. Instead of 20 feet, make it 10. Make it 6. Bang the body. None of that. It was a sparring match, in my opinion. A little better than a sparring match. And, was Alvarez, on steroids? Will that affect him in the second fight? If he wasn't on steroids, I got to favor him in the second fight because he came on towards the end when he realized that, what's his name didn't have that much.
Golovkin. Yeah. Oh, I got to ask you about back to Joshua for a minute, because Joshua was fighting Povetkin on September 22nd in Wembley Stadium in England. There'll be like 80,000 people there. And now it looks like Fury is going to come to the U.S. and fight Wilder in November. Who wins those two fights and why, Jerry?
Well, I'm going to just tell you really quick. Povetkin shot is finished. I mean, he's going to. We're going to see some flaws in Joshua for a while. It's great. It'll be a great fight to watch, right? Because Povetkin's got skills. He was a great amateur, great pro, and we're going to see some flaws in Joshua. Wilder is going to be fighting Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury fights at about 30 miles an hour. Wilder fights at 110. And if he hits you, and if you watch Tyson Fury in his last fight against that C-rated fighter, with his hands down. You can't fight Wilder with your hands down. You got to be very aware of what's going on at all times. And I, listen, I love Tyson Fury. He's a great personality. He's a great promoter. But I think he's in trouble. And listen, for me as a fighter, if I'm fighting Tyson Fury, I'm getting inside the jab and I'm banging the rib. I'm breaking the ribs. I'm going to break the ribs. The people don't body punch anymore. I don't understand that. But, Tyson Fury, great guy, great personality. Can talk really good about the fight. But Deontay Wilder, he got screwed around. 3 of his fights, the guys tested positive for drugs. He got left out. He got left out in the cold. He was left out in the cold until Tyson Fury stood up and said, "Listen, I'm going to give you a shot."
I admire that about him too. That Wilder Joshua deal never came together, and Eddie Hearn, Joshua's promoter, really didn't give Wilder a whole lot of respect when he was negotiating that purse. That's my perspective. But Jerry, if Wilder beats Fury, let's say he knocks him out, who holds the hammer when they start negotiating again for that Joshua Wilder fight?
It's a lot more even,
isn't it?
It's a lot more even. It's more 50-50 than anything else. And listen, and Wilder doesn't need Joshua anymore. And listen, they really gave Wilder a hard time. I mean, he was really wanting to fight, and they didn't really. I believe Hearn didn't want the fight. That's why he was telling them they're going to give you $5 million or $10 million, whatever it was. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I think they didn't want the fight. And tell you the truth, Joshua can fight over there in England and sell out the place, fight nobody. For a bunch of years.
So, who do you think's fourth best out of that group? You got the top 3, and then guys like Bellew and Big Baby Miller and Luis Ortiz still, and who's next? Dillian White.
Dillian White is a good guy up there. He's been getting a lot of experience that the other guys haven't had. So he's more of a real guy. I mean, he's a force to be reckoned with both those guys, Wilder and Joshua. Both. And the division is forming now. The guys are coming up. It's going to take a couple more years. But, there's fights out there for us to see.
You think Dillian White... Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Jerry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead. I was
just going to ask you about Dillian White. You think he's getting better with each fight?
I do. He's fighting the guys. He's figuring out the way to win, to get the win. He's learning. He's growing. He's in good shape. He's ready. And Hearn, he's throwing him in, as to test him, and he keeps rising to the occasion.
Let's go back to your day, your heyday, Gerry. I mean, golly, you had such a who's who of heavyweights. Of course, the aforementioned Larry Holmes, and then there was Tyson and Holyfield, and Ken Norton, and Ernie Shavers, Ron Lyle, and Mike Weaver, Tim Witherspoon, Carl Truth.
That was a fun time back then.
Yeah.
I'm on like I said, I do Sirius XM Radio every Monday, every Friday at 6 to 8 p.m. on 93. But back then I didn't get it. I was with these two managers that were trying to make money from me, not develop me as a fighter.
Yeah.
And so a lot of guys, I should have had 4 or 5 more fights before I fought Holmes. I should have built my confidence. I should have built my stamina, my ability, my understanding of the game. And so, but I didn't. And they put me in this place to get this big payday. But and what happened to me in that process was after I knocked out Norton in the first round, that night I went wild. I lost that. I needed someone to grab me by the arm and say, "Hey, Cooney, come on, let's go." But unfortunately, I didn't have that, and I got stopped in the 13th round. We had a great fight that night. It was a lot of fun.
Yep.
It was 115 degrees. I wish it was about 75.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think I know.
Go ahead.
I think I know the answer to this, Gerry. But do you think Larry Holmes was the best fighter of your day?
Oh, yes. I mean, obviously, the guy with the full package was Ali, obviously, but Holmes was a very, very talented guy. He was patient. He waited. He didn't allow you. He just waited. He was smart and calculated, and he was phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know what else? I was noticing I was watching the first round this morning, and he moved like a heyday Ali when he fought you in that first round. That footwork was incredible. The way he was circling,
right,
and jabbing. Yep.
Right. That was great. He was a great guy. I needed more experience. Listen, I knocked all the guys out early. Everyone, all I heard in the papers was I couldn't go the distance, so I was trying to go the distance. No experience.
Yeah.
And that's all helped me for today in my life and what I'm doing now and where I'm going. One day I'll train a fighter and share those experiences with him and give him the information he needs to get over that hurdle.
Yeah. You were a Long Island kid, Gerry, and what do you remember? This must have been incredible. I mean, I can't even imagine. What do you remember about fighting in Madison Square Garden the very first time?
It was so hard being me. It was very difficult.
Was it?
I had the greatest time of my life. Listen, I'm in Madison Square Garden at 16 years old, fighting for the middleweight championship of the state of New York. If I win, Herman Sporting Goods is going to give me a heavy bag. I had to lose 8 pounds the night before the weigh-in. I went to Tad's Steakhouse and had a steak dinner in early afternoon. And I went out there and got the middleweight championship of the world. And the next morning, it was 7:30 in the morning. I was at Herman Sporting Goods store waiting for my heavy bag.
Wow,
got it. That's cool.
And then I go to Europe on the United States team. I get 4 knockouts in 4 fights. I come back. They tell me to stay in shape. The Russians are coming. And then 6 days before the fight, they tell me the Russians come in. That's when I started training.
Oh.
And I went in there, thank God, and I hit him on the chin, knocked him dead in the first round. And I was off. And, listen, it was a great life. The people I met, the great people I met in my lives, the movie stars, the sports stars, the people from all over the world who contact me still today. Man, it's great.
That's good.
I'm still in the game I love so much. I understand it now. I made mistakes. I didn't take care of myself. I didn't have the right people behind me.
You know, let's go back to 1981, Jerry. When back to the Garden, when you knocked out Ken Norton in 54 seconds. That was the quickest KO in the main event at Garden in history. I mean, you've got so many memories, but what's your most vivid memory of that night?
I told you guys I'm getting old. I can't remember.
Well, whatever you remember.
Very
whatever
slow.
you remember, tell us.
Listen, the best moment of my life is I'm coming out of my hotel room. The camera's there saying, how you feeling right now? And I'm thinking to myself, you really want to know how I'm feeling right now? I'm going to with Kenny Norton, Mandingo. But I knew that once the bell rang, I was going to touch him. I was going to hit him with my powers and let him know where I'm at. And I caught him with a shot to the body, and he buckled a little bit. And it was a phenomenal moment for me. You know, I spun him on the ropes. I got him in the corner. Took me 2 shots to catch up with him, but when I caught him, I knocked him on the second rope. And every time I turned around, I looked at the referee, but he didn't stop it, so I kept going.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, experience matters more than that for me. Is a couple of fights before that, I won a fight, a 2-fight, whatever. I'm fighting Ron Lyle in the Coliseum. I have a very good friend of mine. I'm a young kid, 22 or 21, whatever I was. And my friend tells me, he says, Jerry, when you knock out tonight, I want you to reach out and touch that crowd. I didn't know what he was talking about. As I'm telling you now, I get chills. That night, I knocked out Kenny Norton, and I reached out and I touched every one of those fans that night. And it was the most powerful experience of my whole life. Aside from my wife and my kids.
Yeah. Wow.
This is the Ringside Boxing Show from Monterey, California. I'm Dennis Taylor with John J. Responti. We're talking to one of our all-time favorites, gentleman Gerry Cooney, who's got a terrific radio show with Randy Gordon. You can hear it Friday night and Monday night, 6 to 8 Eastern Time. That's so that would be what 3 to 5 on the Pacific
California.
Coast. Yeah, California time, and that's on Sirius XM Radio. Well, you know, we've talked to you in the past about that atmosphere at the Holmes fight, but I want to bring up something with you again. Don King, who promoted that fight, really went out of his way to create a racially charged atmosphere by hyping you as the Great White Hope. And you didn't like that at all. Explain why.
Listen, let me tell you the funny story about it is that about a year and a half ago, my wife sent away to get your saliva, you get tested about her heritage, and I found out that my grandfather's mother, on my mother's side, was African American.
No kidding.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
Gosh.
What was it like? You know, listen, I was just, making light of all that stuff that went on all through the years. But listen, it was dumb, and thank God for me, I had 6 or 7 guys I grew up with me during that time. I used to fly them out to my camp. We'd hang out, have a good time, and I didn't pay attention to it. I mean, obviously it was distasteful, and sometimes, listen, I hate prejudiced people, whether they're white, black, or Chinese, whatever they are.
Yep.
But unfortunately, we live in a world where that's a norm. So I can't allow that to affect me. Why am I going to let that bother me for? Listen, I wanted to beat Larry Holmes that night. I had a great time. You know, I got stopped in the 13th round. That wasn't so good, but everything else was unbelievable. I've been in the world of like you just can't imagine, and I'm able to feel it and enjoy it.
I think it was Sports Illustrated that reported that there were actually death threats for you guys before that fight, and there were police snipers on the rooftops around that outdoor stadium at Caesar's Palace. They were watching for trouble. Were you aware of that at the time?
You know what? I mean, they had 10 bodyguards around us. I didn't need anybody, really. I had one problem with Holmes' sparring partners one day, and I didn't need anybody that day. Listen, I never thought big about it. I knew it was probably there, but I didn't really pay attention to it. Life was going too fast, man. It was like I was holding on as it was. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But from this little kid from Long Island, it got fast really quickly, and I was holding on for dear life.
Yeah. So, Gerry, what do you consider the greatest achievement of your boxing career?
Wow, that's unbelievable. I mean,
yeah.
Obviously knocking out Norton wasn't too bad. Going 13 rounds with Larry Holmes was not bad. So, listen, I unfortunately, I grew up in a household where I learned 5 things. I was no good. I was a failure. I was not going to amount to anything. Don't tell nobody your business, and don't trust nobody. That's what my father gave me because that's what he grew up with, and he didn't get any information about that. So I grew up with that, and I had that in my head. I couldn't trust it. I was so wound so tight. Today I'm not that way. I learned a lot about it. I put down booze 30 years ago. I found out what all those demons were about. I found out why I was so angry and scared and mixed up and, couldn't trust my managers. I couldn't, I found out about it, and I had to let it go. I had to forgive my father because I want to live. I want to live my life. And those things were really were difficult for me to get through, to look at. I kept avoiding it for years. I kept numbing out with booze. And unfortunately, it cost me a big piece of my career, but it is what it is, and I'm alive, and I made it. Yeah.
What about regret?
I got a great joke for you guys.
Okay, go ahead.
A lady goes into a drugstore, walks up to the pharmacist, and she says, I need some cyanide to kill my husband. The pharmacist says, cyanide to kill your husband? Lady, you'll go to jail. I'll go to jail. You're crazy. So she reaches into her purse and she pulls out a picture, hands it to the pharmacist. It's a picture of her husband in bed with the pharmacist's wife. The pharmacist said, lady, you did not tell me you had a prescription. Boy, you guys are so slow out there, bro. All right, so talk about regret. Talk about regrets. Right. What do you want to talk about?
Yes, I just want to know, you're talking about your managers not getting you prepped for your, not giving you the experience and everything, but is there one that pops into your mind when you think about it where, God, even to this day, you shake your head at how it went down?
Yeah. Well, listen, getting the opportunity to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world and not being prepared in there.
Yeah.
And because I was afraid of it. I was afraid of the success as much as the defeat. Because I learned I was not good enough. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But, no matter what happened to me, my God got me through it. And I found a way, and I have a great life today. I have a beautiful family that's never seen me drink. And I love them. I love them. I love my wife. I can't wait to go to bed with my wife tonight. These things I learned in this process.
Yeah.
Hey, brag about your kids a little bit. What do they do?
Yeah.
My son is going to Lehigh University. He is going to engineering school. He wants to be an engineer. My daughter is a great dancer. She wants to be a psychologist. Both my kids, all 3 of my kids, can fight. My daughter, one of the toughest kids you can imagine. I train her and my son the hardest of anybody I've ever trained my whole life, and they do more. They do Pilates afterwards. It's unbelievable. So they got the punch and they got the brains. They got the brains from their mother.
They actually box? Do they box?
They train with me. We spar. They're not going to fight.
Yeah.
They want to. But, it's a rough game, and if they really want to, I'll help them the best way I can.
That's cool. How about going back to your high school days, Gerry? You were inducted into the Hall of Fame at your high school. Did you play other sports there, or were you already deep into the boxing at that time?
I got to tell you something. I was in football and wrestling, but I was so abused as a kid. I was neglected and beat up, and to control us. That alcoholic family it was so bad that I never really got to explore myself. I sat in the back of the room, out of sight, out of mind, and I did the work. I got by. I didn't really apply myself. I didn't, look for achievements. I didn't, boxing was my first, I was in there by myself. I couldn't trust nobody. That's how I turned to boxing, and I won the middleweight championship. I got they announced me over the loudspeaker in school when I was 16.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. And that's what fed me. And that's what kept me alive. And that's what made me somebody. You know what I mean? This is the deal, right? Fighting is a hard game. And I don't know if anybody really likes to fight, but boxing was a way for me, I found out later on in life, was a way for me to express my anger by boxing. And they put my picture in the paper, so it made me somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big deal for me.
Yeah.
Were you ever a street fighter?
Oh.
Yeah, I used to beat up the bullies. I used to beat the bullies up. Yeah, I was an angry kid, and if you did somebody wrong or did me wrong, I didn't like that too much.
I read an article about you from a few years ago, and you told the writer a story about a parking lot fight that your brother was in outside a bar when you were 15, and the impact it had on you going forward. Can you share that one with us?
Yeah. Well, it's a crazy story. I'm in a bar with my brother, and so we're standing up. It was very crowded, so this guy sitting down, big, 6'9" or something, and my brother's banging into the table, and the guy says something to him. My brother said, "Come on, stop, what are you doing?" He called my brother outside, and so my brother hit the guy with a left hook to the body, knocked the wind out of him, and a right hand on the chin to knock him out. And that was the most devastating. I thought he killed the guy. I said, "We got to get out of here." And my brother was a great talent too, Tom Cooney, but he never got a chance to stay with it because he went cross country and did his own life. But it was an amazing story. I always felt confident around any kind of trouble because of him.
Nice. Okay, when you look back at your career, your boxing career, the bad mixed with the good, can you say that you overall enjoyed it?
Hell yeah, are you kidding? I had to tell him, President Reagan had a phone in my room waiting to talk to me. Come on, are you kidding me? I traveled the world twice. Yeah. I met my wife. I got a great family. Yeah, man, I had some bad days. It's life. That's life. But I learned a lot through that time, and because of that, I'm a very lucky man.
Yeah. Okay, let's get in the time machine, Gerry, and if you could go back, give some advice to the 17-year-old Gerry Cooney, what would you tell him?
The fight game is the managers and the promoters, they want to keep the fighters dumb.
Yes.
So I'll take care of this, I'll do that, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do this. And the fighter thinks, wow, this is great. They got to pay attention. You got to go to the boxing commission and find out what you're signing. No favors, no nice guy, because the game is here in a minute. It flashes by in a second. You got to pay attention and do the work and struggle. I told them all. I told Riddick Bowe. I told him, listen, forget about everything. Just stay training for 5-6 years. Then you can do whatever you want. Stay away from the women, the song, the dance. Just train and pay attention. And it's going to go like that, I told them. And some of them listen, some of them don't. Most of them don't. Yeah. Hey, the same as I told 100 guys who were going to become promoters. They're going to promote with this guy and that guy. I told them all, don't do it. Do not do it. And they all did it. And you know what? They all end up broke.
Yeah.
That's just life. But I got to pass my experience on. And one day I'm going to teach some kid that experience, and I'm going to help someone become a champion.
Okay, nice.
I had the gift. I had a great trainer, Victor Valley. Victor Valley was a great trainer. And unfortunately, back in those days, life was too fast. I couldn't catch a hold of it all. But when I finished and I, got settled in, I understand much more what he was trying to teach me back then. I was a puncher back then. That's all I cared about.
You were really close with him, right? If I remember correctly, very close.
We were very, very close, very close.
Yeah.
I was close with him. I was close with Gil Plants. I was close with everybody. Listen, man, I'm close with everybody. I'm even close with you guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I love people, man. I love people.
Yeah.
I tell them the truth.
Yes.
Yep, you sure do. Gerry, how much fun is it? Last question for you, because I know you got stuff to do. How much fun is it for you to do your podcast every week on Sirius XM with Randy?
Well, I don't do a podcast. I'm on Sirius XM Radio.
Okay.
I do a podcast. Sometimes I sit in with Randy, but I'm on Sirius XM Radio Mondays and Fridays from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on Channel 93.
Okay.
You know what? I follow the game more than I've ever done before. I know the guys. I know the game. So I pick fights. I'm 99.9% of the time I'm always right. Unless I don't pay attention. I don't do my homework. Sometimes I make a mistake. And as a matter of fact, that was only once in the last 10 or 12 years I've been doing radio.
Just one mistake.
So, yeah, I picked the wrong guy because I didn't pay attention. I didn't know the one guy. But, anyway, listen, it's a dream. I love fight game. I love to watch these guys grow. I try and tell fighters like Shawnee Porter, shorten your punches up, don't throw them so long, don't fall off balance. I hope he's going to take that into this fight with Danny Garcia because he's going to need that. Because Danny Garcia can punch.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't figure it out till it's over. He's a great kid, as are all the other guys I meet. And so it's all good. Fight game is beautiful, bro. A lot of great people.
Yeah, sure is.
Fantastic. Check out Gerry Cooney on Sirius XM Radio, channel 93, 6 to 8 on Fridays and Mondays. Gerry, man, always a pleasure talking to you, and it's been too long. Thanks a bunch again for making some time for us today on the Ringside Boxing Show.
Oh, a lot of fun. Thank you, guys. Look forward to seeing you. And listen, I want to tell you, I read you guys all the time. You guys help me in my...
Thank you, Gerry. Thank you, Gerry.
See you, fellas. Bye now.
Take care.
Gerry Cooney on the Ringside Boxing Show. Hey, do you like this show? Do us a solid and tell your boxing friends about the Ringside Boxing Show. Help us grow. Post us on your social media sites. Also, if you haven't yet discovered the #1 website in the world for daily boxing news, you are missing out. We update ringsideboxingshow.com 7 days a week with the hottest headlines and the most interesting stories every single day. If you are a hardcore boxing fan, this is absolutely the first stop that you should make every single day, and maybe the only website that you need to visit all day long. So thanks as always today to our expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and John J. Responti, and thanks, another huge thanks to former heavyweight contender Gerry Cooney, one of our all-time favorites. And finally, thanks to you, Ringside Nation, for being a part of our worldwide audience again today. Keep your chin tucked, and we will talk to you again next week on the Ringside Boxing Show.
Well, it's a great day for me to whoop somebody's ass. It's a bad day, so you better get off of my back. You might get cold cocked if you cross my path. It's a great day